Knowledge is power, but you'll have to learn how to decipher the information in order to use it effectively. Knowledge well. Informed conclusions are drawn here. And now, your host, Courtney Scott.
Good afternoon, Courtney Scott here with Knowledge Well Media. It is Saturday, December the 31st, and the eve of the new year of 2017, bringing it in right where I left off. I know it's been a long time since I've actually put out a recording, but took a little break off. Sometimes it's necessary with all the different investigations and reporting and things like that. Sometimes it gets a little heavy, and obviously there's no shortage of news out there with all the things that are going on in our community and around the world. So I have my trusty Coco here, and I'm going to be checking out a new actual site today where I was looking, of course, for information and sources for information, and I came across this site here. So I'm just going to refer to the author as Ken, and then I'm going to try out his blog site here and see how on point he is so far, though I looked back in some of his archives and found that he was pretty accurate on some of the things that he had analyzed. And so we're going to go with Ken, and we'll give him a try and see just where he takes us. And perhaps I'll give him more information on him as we go. But seems like a pretty decent person in search of truth, like the rest of us there. So let's get started here. And so this article here is how Hillary, Trump, and Putin figure into the launch of the New World Order. Again, you may not agree necessarily 100% with everything that's said here, but we learn and we build and we grow in knowledge by taking in the data and then disseminating that data and breaking it up and using the parts that are appropriate and necessary for us to come to a informed conclusion. That's what we do here at Knowledge Well Media. But anyways, once the globalists trigger the new Lehman event and take down the West, the Western populations will be furious at their leaders. The globalists know this. This is why they've been preparing to scapegoat the existing political figures and replace them with pre-marketed outsiders who will set things right again. And then it has a question and answer here. Question. So in the United States, who are the existing political figures? Which figures represent the establishment in people's mind? Answer: the Clintons on the Democrat side, and the Bushes on the Republican side. Question: which American political figures were hung out to dry during Leaky July? And I think that's referring to the WikiLeaks. Answer: the Clintons with the commencement of the Hillary Leaks series, and the Bushes with the release of the 28 pages. We'll get into that a little bit as we go on. Question: in the United States, who is the outsider who will set things right again? Answer: Donald Trump, who was publicly shunned by the Bushes, or the Republican establishment, and publicly opposed by the Clintons, the Democratic establishment. Question: so in the coming U.S. presidential election, who is the establishment candidate, and who is the, quote, anti-establishment candidate? Answer: Hillary Clinton represents the entrenched establishment insider, and Donald Trump represents the anti-establishment outsider who will set things right again. Question: on the global stage, which national leader is most widely perceived to be an anti-establishment figure like Trump? Answer: Vladimir Putin, who is widely portrayed as a threat to the established world order. And then in parentheses it says, which is supposedly controlled by the U.S. empire and its EU vassals. It says here, we all know that after the end of the Cold War, the world was left with one center of dominance, and those who found themselves at the top of the pyramid were tempted to think that, since they are so powerful and exceptional, with exceptional being underlined, they know best what needs to be done, and thus they don't need to reckon with the UN, which, instead of rubber stamping the decisions they need, often stands in their way. That's why they say that the UN has run its course and is now obsolete and outdated. Of course, the world changes, and the UN should also undergo natural transformation. Russia is ready to work together with its partners to develop the UN further on the basis of a broad consensus. But we consider any attempts to undermine the legitimacy of the United Nations as extremely dangerous. They may result in the collapse of the entire architecture of international relations, and then indeed there will be no rules left except for the rule of force. The world will be dominated by selfishness rather than collective effort, by dictate rather than equality and liberty, and instead of truly independent states, we will have protectorates controlled from outside. Globalist Agenda Watch 2015. Update 12. Don't be fooled by globalist rebranding. It says, when I was young, I remember seeing commercials for the weight loss chews pictured above. AIDS, pronounced AIDS, was an appetite suppressant candy which enjoyed strong sales in the 1970s and early 1980s. By the mid-1980s, public awareness of the disease AIDS caused problems for the brand due to the phonetic similarity of names. While initially sales were not affected, by 1988 the chair of Department of Corporation announced that the company was seeking a new name because sales had dropped as much as 50% due to the publicity about the disease. While the product's name was changed to Diet AIDS, it was eventually withdrawn from the market. As you can imagine, the public formed negative associations with the name of the product, so the manufacturer recognized the need to change it. The problem was that they didn't change it enough to get rid of the bad associations. As we head into the public debut of the multilateral, multipolar New World Order, it's important to note that many of the globalists' brands, such as the IMF and the Bank for International Settlements, have also garnered negative associations. So don't be surprised if they move their offices and change their nameplates when the system resets. If you look back to the 1988 Economist article, Get Ready for the Phoenix, we see that it hints at the replacement of the existing IMF brand with something new. So what will be the name of the New World Central Bank? They probably won't call it the Illuminati Central Bank because they'll want to avoid using words in the name that have an association in the public consciousness. Words like globalists, bank, central bank, authority, etc. will likely be omitted, and benign sounding words will be used instead. Benign sounding words, will be used instead. The name might be the New Monetary Council or something along those lines. As for the globalist entities, the Bank for International Settlements might be renamed something like the Financial Coordination Council, and the UN's World Bank might be folded into the BRICS. See, the replacement of tainted existing brands by fresh new brands extends beyond globalist organizations, of course. It includes political figures as well. Many of the leaders people associate with the current crisis, the scapegoats, will be swept aside by heroic, controlled opposition figures who saw it all coming and could have prevented it if only we had the power. As I've shown in previous entries, the globalists seem to be positioning the right-wing dissenters to take the political stage after the transition. This is symbolically appropriate given the whole left-hand, right-hand approach of the elite. They use the left hand to cause chaos and destruction, and the right hand to bring about order and construction. It is for this reason that they've carefully built up a public image of foresighted, conscientious dissent for right-wing figures like Marine Le Pen, Nigel Farage, Ron Paul, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz. They have also done this for left-winger Elizabeth Warren. So she must have some role to play in bringing the political left into the fold after the transition. All this being said, we are heading into the biggest mind explicative that has ever been foisted upon the human race. The elite will be changing the guard, so expect them to make a big show of, and it goes into a list here, taking down the wrongdoers, like they are in China right now. In reality, though, they are not taking down the corrupt. They are merely disposing of those who have outlived their usefulness, or who, quote, know where the bodies are buried, unquote. They might even make a show of scapegoating certain Western elite families that have become tainted in the public eye, such as the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. But no real harm will come to them. That's why disinfo agents like David Wilcock and Benjamin Fulford tell sob stories about how the Illuminati were abused as children. So they shouldn't be blamed for doing things they didn't really want to do, and suggest that the Illuminati face truth and reconciliation commissions rather than punitive criminal courts. The elite don't mind having some of their family members wear dark hats and play the fall guy, but they don't want their bloodline brethren actually harmed. Point number 2, replacing corrupt institutions. Like I've explained in this entry, in reality though, they'll simply be moving their operations from one shell to another. Point 3, and building a fair economic system based on sound money. In reality though, you'll find the asset commodity backing of the new currencies to be more theoretical than actual, especially when it comes to elite coveted gold. Like I've said many times before, any global solution to our problems is a globalist solution. There is no other group of people who have the organization and power to erect a global solution at this time. So no matter what they call the new institutions or who they say are behind them, just look at what the institutions actually do. If they centralize power over your life at the global level, they are your enemies, no matter how nicely they might treat you at first. All right. Observing these 3 facts, it is abundantly clear that the BRICS alliance was fashioned by the Western globalists. Let's see, the BRICS nation, let me explain that instead of just running over that, because some people out there just might not know what the BRICS nation, who the BRIC nations are. So let's see here. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Okay? That's what the BRICS nations are. They're comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So observing these 3 facts, it is abundantly clear that the BRICS alliance was fashioned by the Western globalists. The West brought the BRICS into the global economic governance system back in 1999. The West gave them a name and it introduced the idea of them becoming a bloc back, or BLOC bloc, back in 2001. And the BRIC nations accommodated the West by forming the bloc in 2006. Let's look up what the bloc is. A political alliance, also referred to as a political coalition, political bloc, is an agreement for cooperation between different political parties on common political agenda, often for purposes of contesting an election to mutually benefit by collectively clearing election thresholds, or otherwise benefiting from characteristics of the voting system, or for government formation after elections. So a coalition that's formed. All right, so we're learning a lot here today. And that's what it's all about. All right, so continuing on, and the BRIC nations accommodated the West by forming the bloc in 2006, just before the 2007-2009 economic crisis hit. They then held their first BRIC summit right after the effects of the Lehman shock eased in 2009, which was the same year that the BRIC inclusive G20 formally supplanted the G7 as the world's permanent Council for International Economic Cooperation. Since the G20 nations are all run by politicians owned by the same international banking cabal, getting them to form the NWO or New World Order is something that could be done at any time. It takes more than simply getting the leaders to vote for it, though. The general population of these nations must follow their leaders into the new system, and this is what the BRICS alliance is all about. It is an exercise in public relations. As I mentioned in a previous entry, the BRICS alliance gives form to the dialectic clash between Anglo-American bankers and BRICS bankers, which will birth the New World Order. The BRICS concept gives the people of the traditionally oppressed nations the illusion that they have formed a mighty alliance, which will take over the global governance system from the imperialist West, and the perception that they have triumphed and taken over is supposed to lead to their enthusiastic embrace of the New World Order system. But alas, it is all a scam. I hope that comes out clear to you in how he's trying to explain the finagling of these joining together of different nations in order to get the people to embrace a new world order, essentially pitting different angles and different nations together or against each other. And it's going to talk a lot more about that as we go on. So this is more about exposing the games behind the scenes that we don't, as just normal average citizens, the things that we don't see that are going on behind closed doors. So getting back to the ideas in Putin's UN speech. When he talks about truly independent states, he's referring to the phony return to national sovereignty that is part of the NWO narrative. The globalist vision, pay attention, for the New World Order is to have a world of smaller, seemingly independent nations that must cooperate in order to maintain their security and a modern standard of living. Good cocoa. And that international cooperation is to take place through multilateral institutions that the globalists control, with the globalists created BRICS rebranded, UN being the centerpiece of it all. So with all this set before us, what roles do Hillary, Trump, and Putin play in the globalist New World plan? Stay with me. It gets much more interesting. Hillary represents the established world order that will be defeated in favor of the BRICS New World Order. Putin will be the de facto or de jure leader of the New Order, possibly a Secretary General of the UN. And Trump will cooperate with the New Order due to the fact that it will appear to be a return to national sovereignty. And since newly elected Western leaders must be seen as anti-establishment and amenable to cooperation with Putin, Hillary is scripted to lose this election. Let me pause there for a minute. I want to say that this article is pre the election. And here Ken, as I'll call him, is saying that Hillary is scripted to lose this election. But continuing on, the globalists will not allow the presence of the sullied old Western leaders to stain the reputation of Putin and his New World Order. He added in, he interjected here, saying that Rand Paul was the man, apparently at first, but he couldn't energize the electorate. So then they went with somebody that was, like it says here, more loud, more stupid, and more showy in Donald Trump. All right, and then from RT, let's see here. With all this set before us, we see who was behind the leaky July we have just experienced. The British royals are a leading element of the occulted powers network, which runs the whole show. Barack Obama is a front man who serves that network in its U.S. division, and the WikiLeaks is a project of the intelligence division of that network. It was the globalists, the royals, the Jewish central bankers, and their Freemason minions that all together constitute the occulted powers that orchestrated Leaky July, again referring to the WikiLeaks drop. It wasn't the globalist frontman Putin on his Russian division. He's just playing his part in the phony East versus West dialectic drama. As for the purpose of the leaks, they are aimed at facilitating the takedown of the West so the East can bring in the New World Order the globalists have been planning all along.